The U.S. hit another grim milestone today. More than 50,000 people have now died from COVID-19. But as people are looking to protect themselves, several doctors and even the maker of Lysol have come out today to remind people not to ingest disinfectants after this statement from the president.
So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside?
That was last night, but when asked about it today, the president had this to say.
I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better.
All right, we'll talk more about that later in the show. But before we do, there's another growing issue we want to address. Scammers trying to get the money people need now more than ever. While many people have already gotten those stimulus checks worth up to $1,200, millions are still waiting. And scammers are pulling out all the stops to get that money before you can. Some do it through phone calls. Others send links through texts or emails, asking you to verify information like your Social Security number, address, and most recent tax filing information. And that's all a scammer needs to reroute your money, or even your 2019 refund through the IRS website. Okay, I'm joined now by Bob Thomas, a former assistant U.S. attorney and co-founder of the Whistleblower Law Collaborative. Welcome, Bob, and I want to say thank you for contacting us and calling our attention to this. And we knew it was a problem. I didn't have an idea of the scale. First of all, it's infuriating, but what is the scale of this?
The scale of this is enormous, and we're just in the first inning of this 9-inning ball game. We are going to see quite a lot of this. It's going to take a lot of different forms, unfortunately, but I think we're going to see two very large waves of fraud. One related to COVID-19 with respect to healthcare and medical issues, and then I think another wave almost in parallel with funny business connected to the stimulus money.
So, I mean, is the federal government responsible for this? Did they rush it out? I mean, I know there's been a lot of hacking and tapping into people's Social Security numbers and all that kind of thing, but was there a way that the government could have protected more people before they sent the checks out?
Well, it's always easy to second guess what the government tries to do in a very large scale program like this. So I think we have to resist that temptation a little bit. But the important takeaway is, we are a large country of 330, 350 million, whatever the number is. And when you try to get financial relief to this many people this quickly, there's almost no system that you could devise that would be truly secure. In other words, speed comes with real vulnerabilities. If you made the system tighter and more safe, it would take longer to do, and people would be tremendously frustrated at waiting. And the whole point of this program was to get money in people's hands quickly.
Okay, Bob, some people have already gone on, they've been tracking their checks. They go onto their website, they realize it's already been cashed. Meanwhile, somebody has already signed up online as them to get their unemployment. If that happens to you, do you have a recourse, or is that money gone?
People always have a recourse. The question is, how much time, effort, and hassle is it going to take? And that's the real problem when you have a situation like someone whose $1,200 stimulus payment has been taken. Sure, if you had unlimited time and resources, you could track this down and spend a lot of time on the phone with the IRS or with other agencies trying to figure out, well, where did the money go and how can I find that person? But that's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and not easy for most people to do.
And will the government reimburse you or no?
That remains to be seen. I think they're going to be inundated. One of the challenges here is that if there are hundreds and hundreds of people calling per IRS agent, how many of those calls can they take in a given day? So there's just going to be an enormous backlog of this kind of problem.
I mean, one thing that people need to know is the federal government, the IRS, is never going to call you on the phone. They are not going to text you. They're not going to email you. If they want to get in touch with you, it's going to be by the U.S. Postal Service, and it's usually to tell you that you owe them money. So people just need to know that. And that's just one scam. What about some of these other things, like this testing? People are trying to sell people these testing kits, too, that are all totally bogus.
Yeah, I think the way I would look at this is there's two kind of angles you can take. One is that from the consumer standpoint, there's quite a lot of fact patterns that we're seeing. And these are fairly well publicized at this point. You go on almost any government website at this point, and they'll list some of the things to look out for. They might be things like phony cures, phony testing kits, drugs that purport to work for one or all of the symptoms of COVID-19. Phony charities. There's just any number of things that could be in play, and so that's number one. Is like people need to be alert to things that sound too good to be true, or someone who's asking for a little too much information.
Like your Social Security number.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that I think is really important to emphasize is that there are if you look at this from an entity standpoint or some of the large corporate actors who are in this space, there's going to be mischief of a different sort, which is large enterprises trying to tap into some of this stimulus money who might not be eligible for it. So larger fraud patterns. Yeah. And people may be aware of that kind of problem as well, research grant fraud or FDA fraud in terms of the efficacy of drugs. The sky's the limit in terms of what people can think up when there's $2 trillion out there in play.
Okay, well, Bob, thanks. I know Google already intercepted 18 million of these bogus emails and stuff, but wasn't good enough. Bob Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.